Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. This is Carmen with Elemental Designs here, and today we're going to be creating another art journal page, well spread actually, layout. I'm going to be doing some stamping. I'm also going to be adding all different kinds of mediums and just playing with all different kinds of things. So here I'm just kind of gathering my stamps, and I keep my stamps in binders and I store my stamps on acetate sheets for easy storage. Here I'm going to be using some Tim Holtz the tissue wrap, but I'm also going to be applying some tissue as well, some regular, napkins. So what you're going to see me here do is pretty much, I'm only going to use half of the sheet. So I went ahead and just got my half ready, and I'm going to be applying that with matte medium. And if you don't have matte medium, you can always use, decoupage. It's best to use these kinds of glues and not so much like school glue, even though you can use school glue. But if you're going to use school glue, then just add a little bit of water and thin it out some so that it's more of a looser consistency. But this is archival, so that means that over time and years, your pages won't yellow, they won't change color, it won't affect the colors and the paints that you use on them, which is why I like to use this matte medium. And this is a product by Deco Art, but you can find this product pretty much from many different makers. So here I'm just going to be using the green parts of this napkin, and this napkin is absolutely beautiful. So I wanted to save the little birdies for a different application on a different kind of either art journal page or even creating something else with it. So here I'm just separating the two layers because you don't want that white part of the backing of the napkin, only because it creates more bubbles and your pages won't stick as well. The napkin won't stick as well to the paper itself. So pretty much you're just going to see me applying those. And be very careful when you do not apply too much pressure. Do not overwork the napkin too much. As you go laying the napkin down, just add a little bit of glue and apply a little bit of glue and apply so that you can go spreading the glue out, as well as pushing out any air bubbles. And you achieve the best result by doing this a little bit at a time while holding one end of the napkin, kind of up, kind of lifting one end of the napkin as you go applying it all down. Which is why you see me kind of holding the napkin, throughout most of this process. So you see me kind of holding it up in one end as I go applying it through the other ends. This just kind of helps me to get all the air out and also spread the glue out as much as possible. So here I'm just, again, just adding the rest of it, trying to get as many of those little green parts as possible. My idea for this layout was to have the houses, kind of laying on this kind of like grassy field, but I wasn't really sure if I was going to have them, on just a straight plane, or if I was going to be creating some hills out of it. Naturally, as you lay all these different pieces down, you will get some shapes. So pretty much based on some of the shapes that I achieved, naturally from just the way that the tissue was being laid out, I went ahead and decided on the kind of layout that I was going to use for this. Then you want to make sure that you let this dry before you go cutting. So at this point in time, I'm just making sure that I fill in all the little gaps, and then I'm going to let this dry and proceed to work on the stamps and the images that I'm going to be using for this layout. And just applying a whole coat of the matte medium just to protect the surface overall. I did not apply any gesso on this page because I was not going to be using paints directly on it like that. As long as you're not going to be using any wet mediums, you don't really need to worry about gessoing your page. As long as you have some kind of protective, barrier on it, like a matte medium or some or decoupage or some kind of, something to cover the surface. So here I'm using my stamping tool, and I'm going to be stamping out all 4 of the houses, although I will eventually just use 3 of them and not the 4. I'm actually going to be using those first 3 that you see me kind of stamp out. And that's what's great about doing these kinds of projects. You can go ahead and just, if you want to create some images ahead of time, then you can go ahead and do that. And this is Neenah white cardstock, what I'm using here. And you can buy these by the ream, 250 sheets for not that much money. So it's a very affordable cardstock. So I'm not going to use the one with the little tree. I'm going to use the first three. And here I'm using some Jane Davenport watercolors, which was gifted to me by my friend, Mom to Create. And I've been just dying to like really play with these a little bit. Some of the little things did fall out, which I guess does tend to happen, but I went ahead and organized them the way that they needed to be. So I'm just picking my colors out, and I've added water to all of the little wells, and I'm just going to introduce the color from the watercolor palette onto here. And I've got some reds and some browns and some blacks. I'm going to also be using some yellows and this very kind of like a violet color. And I'm going to be watercoloring all of the little houses. I really enjoyed playing with these watercolors. They are really nice to work with. And I'm sorry if I say a lot. That's just my brain takes a pause. So that's when the comes out. So I'm just going to go ahead and just color all of these in. And as you can see, there's a lot of color. They're very vibrant. Although when they do dry out somewhat on the duller side, I would say. But I think that is true for most watercolors, is that they're the most vibrant once they're wet, and as they dry, they do tend to kind of get a little bit dull. So later on, you will see me also kind of go over some of them with a little bit of colored pencils, which I'll discuss once those come up. So here, just pretty much just adding a little bit of shading, playing around with the colors, and just having a lot of fun. Again, I really enjoy working with these kinds of mediums, with watercolors, you know, all different kinds. I like playing with them all. And then I'm going to go ahead, after I'm done with all of these, I'm going to go ahead and just, you know, sever all of them. I decided to let you guys kind of see the process of how I do, you know, everything that I do. I try to not edit out as much of it out, so that you guys can see more or less the process of how I go through, you know, coloring everything. If you guys want me to edit those parts out just to make to save time and make the videos speedier, then definitely let me know down below if that's something that you would like to see me also incorporate our videos. That it's just I have everything ready and here it is. This is what I'm going to create type of videos. Now I did get a request yesterday with the art journal page that I created with the Prima doll to do kind of like a DIY, not so much a DIY, but like a breakdown of you know, alternate mediums, alternate products that you can use when it comes to, I guess, creating art journaling and things like that. And what I will say is that for the most part, when I started doing art journaling, I started pretty much doing art journaling with my own kind of mediums. I created my own mediums. That's kind of how I started. I started playing with my own homemade gessos. I started playing with my own homemade modeling paste, and I made my own medium, my own like glue, decoupage glue. And how I did that was I grabbed regular school glue, like your Elmer's glue, and I applied water to the Elmer's glue and kind of thinned it out. You don't want it to be too loose. You want it to be like almost like a translucent, but you still want it to have a little bit of weight to it. Just a little bit of water will do, just to kind of allow it to spread easier. Because as you know, Elmer's glue is a very thick kind of glue, and you don't want to have it so thick. So you add a little bit of water to it, and you can store that in a jar or something of that nature, and just make sure that you label it, because they're all the same color, the matte medium, the gesso, everything is pretty much the same color. And that's how I did that. And I would use that to pretty much decoupage on my pages and seal my pages and things of that nature. As far as the gesso that I used, it was my own homemade recipe, and it was baby powder, non-starch, non-cornstarch and non-starch baby powder, just regular baby powder that you get from like your local dollar stores. It was school glue again, like the Elmer's glue, and then again a little bit of water, and just creating something that was easily spreadable in order to protect my pages. And that's kind of how I started getting myself familiar with what these products were and what they were used for. And then as well as the modeling paste, the same deal, just pretty much applying baby powder and just glue with no water and making a paste out of it that was easy to spread and storing that as well. So if you're interested in, kind of starting your own art journaling and you're not really sure as far as the products and the mediums and so on and so forth, I would definitely recommend to start with creating your own. That way you can play and experiment with them without having to, to spend that much money on buying them. And then once you find yourself in a place where you really feel comfortable with them, then definitely start, venturing out into different brands to see which are the ones that you like the best. There are many different brands. We have Liquitex, we have Deco Art, we have so many different brands. Even at Michael's, they have the Art Loft brand. There's so many different brands and things that you can use. So here I was just trying to use a little bit of that brown that I had left over on the watercolor palette. I'm not going to use the remainder of those watercolors that are left over. I'm going to be using other mediums to complete this page. And now that my page is dry, I can go ahead and just trim up all that excess tissue all around my edges. So trying to figure out where I want my houses, and at first I'm like, okay, I'm going to put them all here and I'm going to have my sentiment on the other side, but I'm like, I don't know. So now I'm going to go ahead and water down some of that gesso. By spraying some water on it, and I'm just going to apply that to the very top, right where all the text is, to kind of bring that back into the background. And again, I thin it out because I want to just cover up a little bit. I want to bring all that text into the background. I want to have a plain kind of canvas for me to be able to spread color on and pretty much doodle or whatever it is that I want to do. And that's what gesso does for you. It allows you to kind of color, draw, and do all kinds of things with that. So here I'm going in with Broken China, and this is a Distress Oxide, which is one of the new products by Tim Holtz. And I'm applying this everywhere. This is Faded Jean, I believe, is the color, which is the darker blue. And I'm applying that in as well. I was trying to achieve the look of clouds, which wasn't really working for me so well. And I didn't want to apply water onto my page because, again, I didn't gesso it originally, so I knew that I couldn't be applying a lot of wet things. So in case you didn't know, you can also use your daubers, which are those little sponge things. You can use that with other inks as well. Some inks will spread a little bit better than others. You just have to kind of experiment and see, how that works. But because my page is primed in the sense that I applied the matte medium on it and then I went ahead and applied the gesso on it, it does allow for it to kind of glide all over the page a little bit easier than if you were just going to do that straight on. So here I'm going to use a paint dauber, and this is another product by Deco Art, and this is like for writing on glass and windows and stuff like that. And I was having a little bit of a hard time getting some of the paint out because I haven't used it in quite some time. So here I'm just trying to smooth it out with a dauber. With the dauber and as well as with the stamping, the stamp tool there that you see. The blending tool, I should say, that's what it is, the blending tool. And I'm just trying to soften it out, but it was still kind of not showing too much for me. So I'm going to go ahead after this and pull out some white media paint, which is by Deco Art, and it's a very loose kind of paint, but you can also do the same thing with just watering down your regular acrylics. So here I'm kind of just using the blending tool and just daubing it on there. And I like this a lot better. And I really love the way that the clouds came out after it was all said and done. And I'm kind of going this from an angle. I'm not necessarily going using it flat on the surface. I'm kind of just, I want that rounded edge of the cloud. So I'm just kind of going in it at an angle and then just making sure that the outermost part is as wide as possible. Excuse me, you guys. And then just cleaning off that sponge just to make sure. Excuse me, guys. I'm so sorry. But I'm going to end up coughing regardless of how many times I start and go and do this through. I really did like how these clouds came out. And I wanted some sunshine. So I'm like, okay, I need a sun back here somewhere. So I'm using a gelato in yellow to kind of rub that in. And it is such a smooth consistency. Okay, so I'm using gelatos, and I use the yellow for the main base of the sun, and then I use some orange to kind of just go around the edge, just to make it pop a little bit more. And that is what's great about those gelatos. They're so easy to spread, especially on gesso surfaces. So here I'm using a Memento ink pen because I'm already trying to figure out, okay, where do I want this? So I'm just kind of sketching out roughly like where I want certain things to be, and just seeing if my idea was going to work as far as blending out certain things. So I'm using this pen, this marker actually, to do that. And this is not really designed for that. This is actually for stamping, but I use everything I have. So feel free to use whatever it is that you have. You don't have to have certain special tools to achieve, or to create with, any particular kind of thing. As long as you know which ones are your water-based, which ones are your permanents, that's pretty much all you need to know. That way, when you're trying to create certain things, you'll know, okay, I can apply this for this kind of method because this is blendable, it's water-based, and then when I don't want this to move, then I have to apply this with a permanent marker that won't move. And that is why I'm going in now with my India ink pen, which is a Faber-Castell Pitt pen. And these are the smaller versions of those really big Pitt pens that you see. These are the smaller versions, which is exactly the same thing. And because my surface has been pretty much primed with the matte medium, it glides easy and I can spread that ink around while it's still kind of wet. It'll take a few more seconds for it to dry, as opposed to when you do it on regular paper. When you do it on regular paper, it won't move. And also, it's not bothered by any kinds of waters or anything like that. And this is why prepping your surface is good, because if you make a mistake, you can also go into it with a baby wipe and kind of correct that mistake really quick before it gets, set in permanently. So I'm just playing with different colors here, some reds and some greens. Trying to get a mid-tone of like a brownish kind of color, as well as keep some of that red and some of that green. And I wanted to do that center hill a little bit different than the other two, just so that it creates, the separation between them. So here again, I'm just playing with all of the different markers that I have just to create different things. And here I'm going to go in with the black, and this is like a brush tip, and I'm just going to rub that in. So I'm going to apply it and rub it, apply it and rub it really, really quickly, just so that I get some of that shadowing while it's still nice and wet. And if you see a lot of art journalers and people that do these kinds of projects, you'll always see that they pull out the Pitt brush pens, the Pitt pens, because they're just really, really good for creating that permanent mark that you don't want to, move around or anything like that. And I've gone ahead and just created my partitions, my separations in the back, because I wanted it to just look like a field back there. And here I'm just adding some green and adding a little bit of white to create that highlight, because the sun is hitting it. So I assume that it's going to be a little bit brighter in that space just because the sun is hitting it. And I'm actually not going to seal this page up. I'm probably going to seal it up now, but I let it be, and I just let it set overnight, if you will. It's not something that you necessarily need to do, but I just wanted to make sure that those gelatos were nice and, as dry as they can possibly be. Not that they're necessarily wet, but when I go apply my matte medium, I don't want all of those colors moving all over the place, so I just let them be for now. And I added a little bit of double-sided tape on each of the houses and then applied some glue on there just to stick them on and make sure that they're there permanently. And so now I have my 3 houses. And now it's going to be time for me to add some more shading around the house. And you're going to see me use ear, a Q-tip, one of those things for the ears, a Q-tip, to kind of spread that out. Right now I'm just trying to figure out, okay, this is where I want certain things to be, and I'm highlighting, where the road is going to be. And then I started with a baby wipe, and then you're going to see me it's just a little bit easier to get into some of the smaller spaces with a Q-tip. So I'm going to go into that with a Q-tip in a few minutes or in a few seconds in this, in video time. I just wanted to make sure that I got those partitions kind of in nicely. So if you guys have any ideas, as far as how you would like for me to go about doing, more of like a beginner's process, if there's things that you would like to see me maybe break down, then I can go ahead and create somewhat of a series, if you will, just for the way that I process things, the way that my mind works. because I do tend to go for cheaper alternatives to certain products only because it's just what's easier for me to work with. So if you guys want to like categorize videos, if you will, like the breakdown of gestles and mediums, you know, the breakdown of just different kinds of markers, so on and so forth, you know, cheaper alternatives, then definitely let me know. I would love to hear your feedback, and that will help me kind of figure out how I can go about this in the best way, um, to help some of you guys that do want to get into like art journaling and things like that, and how to go about doing that. So here you see me using these color pencils. Now these color pencils are a little bit special because they're oil based, and it's so smooth. I absolutely love them, and I bought these on eBay, and they are called um, Marco Refine, and they are Raffine. First name Marco, and I absolutely love them. I honestly, I mean, you can pretty much paint almost on any surface with these, and they always apply just beautifully. And they're so vibrant and bold. Um, I just find the coloring with these is a lot smoother. Everything just glides a lot better. And this again is another cheaper alternative to buying some of the more expensive colored pencils. You can still achieve a really, really good look, you know, with inexpensive tools. So you don't necessarily have to buy, you know, like the more expensive brands. The brands themselves don't really make you a better artist. Practice does. Practice and understanding the mediums that you're using is what makes you a better artist. And not that I'm saying that I'm the best artist out there, but me in the learning process of knowing, okay, this, that. And there are things that I'm still learning, you know, still to this very day. It's what's helping my art grow. It's what's helping me become a better artist every single day, because it's always it's always an evolution. You're always in constant evolution. So here I'm using some stamps, and I'm just adding like little grassy areas. And then what I'm going to do is, I don't really like the sharp edge that they leave in the bottom. So I'm just going to get a little baby wipe and kind of just smudge that out so that it just looks kind of organic, and not so like, you know, straight edged. And at the end of this video, I'm going to have, I took a picture of what the layout looks like once it's completed so that you guys can check that out. If you want to see more pictures, then definitely check out my Instagram at Design Elemental. That's where I usually post up a lot of the pictures of the projects that I have done once they're completed. And in the process of me completing them, sometimes I'll just take little snippets of things that I'm working on and just share it with all of you guys. So I'm going to use some rub-ons, and I decided to use this one about the dream because one day I do hope to be able to own a house, and I want to be in a place like this where every little house is on a hill somewhere. And even though when you see it from far, they look like they're close, as you get closer to them, they're actually very far apart from each other. So this is pretty much what, you know, what inspired this quote. I'm like, definitely I need to do this one day, be able to do this one day, hopefully. And it just pretty much says dream the dream. And I'm going to use something to cover that. I'm going to use a white gel pen. Well, actually, this is a Deco Art paint pen to kind of smudge out that little black area. And then it says in the bottom, seize the moment, which I thought was like perfect for this page. It's one of the very few rub-ons that I have, but you know, I like to use all the things that I have when I, you know, when the time calls for it. And I felt like definitely this is one of those moments where, you know what, this needs something special. Oops, and my paper moved. But I was able to salvage it, and I'm just gonna go into it and just make sure that all of that is, you know, say what they're supposed to say. And that's pretty much it, you guys. I want to thank you all so much for watching, for participating, for joining. I definitely look forward to your comments, you guys. To me, there's no such thing as negative feedback or negative comments, because you learn from every single situation. So have an awesome time, you guys. Have an awesome day. Happy Thanksgiving, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Enjoy.